Well. It's a thing here, K-Mega. And before we
Mm.
get started on anything, I want to say thank you to Yobi for resubscribing to the channel. I appreciate that. Any sort of support, just showing up in the chat sometimes is just enough, right? So, but any additional support is great because it all goes back to the channels and it all goes back to us making this stuff better. So,
Yeah, thank you, Yobi. Really do appreciate it. Shout out to Yobi and his battle cry. That used to be live wires.
are
Beautiful,
you,
Yobi.
are you referring to him as the deep?
The deep. Yes, that's perfect. Yes. Yes. A
Oh,
deep dive,
damn.
Yobi. Yeah, deep
Damn.
dive. Dragon Heart Yobi. And shout out to Yobi because he saw me on Elden Ring and he just thought we was gonna cancel everything. Like, there was gonna be no GRG, there was not gonna be any Fight Night did get canceled, but I'm gonna try to do a fight night tonight.
Yeah.
Um and then
No, in spirit, it literally wasn't
yeah.
that
And
canceled.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I did it.
Yeah.
I I didn't get the memo. I showed
Yeah.
up. I showed
Yeah.
up with a game.
Yeah, we played.
Yeah.
Yeah, we played.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we played. So it was all good. So, anyway, what's up, Don? How you doing? What's going on? Another edition of Devin the Gamer. We're
hmm
here. We're live. What's been going on? What you been playing, bro?
not much. Working on some artwork here to so we can put your mug on a milk carton, just in case you ever boot up Elder Ring again, so we can find you. But no, I've been working on my game. I've been adding more characters to it. Doing some unique things for the pipeline for facial animations, just kind of trying to decide how I'm gonna do certain things like that, and it it's a lot of work, and all of a sudden when you finally see it all, certain things all kind of click and fall together. It's very rewarding. So I've been just putting a lot of work there, and then planning out the new office. The new office is kind of a big deal because I'm going to be doing live streaming on racing sims in there because I'm kind of a racing sim fan, but I don't have the rig to do it quite right yet. And additional YouTube content and all that sort of stuff. Everything's kind of just growing, and I'm just kind of putting the work on everything, and it's kind of all coming together. So
Yeah.
it's always exciting to see that. So
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a slow grind. I mean, it is for me. I'm close to 4,000. Some people would think that I should already be 10, 15,000 subs on YouTube by
oh,
now,
YouTube.
which yeah, yeah, on YouTube. But I mean, I just didn't pump out them videos like people did to get to that point. And it's just, I don't know if that's in my nature. I mean, I'm just kind of I'm a hybrid. I like doing. I love talking about video games. I love doing this type of stuff. Right? Like
Mhm.
it's great, but I don't feel like I just don't want to just come up with some kind of random topic just to throw a video just to get a couple of clicks and just to hit an algorithm. I know that that's what you're supposed to do, but it's
Uh,
never
I
been my thing.
I
You know
don't
what
know
I
if I
mean?
agree
So
with that. I mean, that
yeah,
forced content stuff. I don't really agree with
yeah.
that.
I don't. Yeah, no.
I
I
understand the
think that
urge, the wanting to put something out, but if
mhm,
it's not
yeah,
something you're proud of that you can reflect back on,
yeah.
maybe not the right thing to put out. Is
Right, right,
for far
right.
as all
Yeah,
that
you're
stuff
just
is concerned.
randomly just kind of half-ass talking about something, and I don't know. I'd
And
rather
then
go on my K Mega rants.
well, that's just how sometimes like when you see some YouTube channels, they just report the news, right? And it's just like,
Mm,
well, is there any more substance to? I mean, you're just reading off what someone else is. Half
right,
the time you're
right.
not even doing it attention, or it's just about being upset, right? I'm like, okay, well, that's getting old. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. So, but shout out to everybody, to Yobi, and everybody else, and to your advertisement that popped up on your Twitch. Okay, good
advertisement.
things. So yeah, you got an advertisement. I sit there and I
Oh yeah,
flicked
they
over there.
changed the policies on that stuff, so it's a little more
Yeah,
automated now. So
yeah,
not not really a. Here's the thing, like I, I understand these sites have to make their money. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not like anti like someone's above me has to make money when they build a platform. Like I get it,
hmm
but when you're doing a live show or when something grand moment happens, like to force an advertisement is a little intrusive in my view.
yeah. It
So
can, it can. Yeah, I let my YouTube gaming uh lapse And I didn't know how convenient it is until I started watching videos last night. And I was watching, I'm really big into the draft. I mean, the NBA draft is coming up here, and big
Oh yeah.
Thunder fan. Shout out
It,
OKC
it's
Thunder.
it's a sport in itself, right? When you're
Oh, oh,
watching the
oh yeah,
draft.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so the draft is tomorrow, and so I'm just looking at prospects, checking out videos, all that type of stuff, and all those advertisements that come in between. But if you pay for the YouTube gaming, or just I think for whatever that's actually called, because it's a package with YouTube Music and stuff like that,
Yeah.
um, those advertisements don't even go through. So I'm just like, oh, okay, now I understand. So now I'm going to have to subscribe because yeah, you know what I'm saying. So it is what it is.
No,
But
it's fine.
before we get started, I want to go ahead and give a big shout out to Game Pass, right? Because there's one thing that for certain people they just don't like the fact for people to big up Game Pass, when in all actuality, Game Pass is like a super duper version of a like a blockbuster video or Hollywood video or Gamefly or something like that, right? So
It's Blockbuster
um
without the late fees, right?
right. So
So
and you can hold on to the games a hell of a
you,
lot longer. So
you
that's
also
why I'm
don't
kind of
rent
like
also don't
Gamefly.
rent a disc that has scratches in it and skips and it won't
Oh,
read and all the
oh
other
yeah, yeah,
all the
yeah.
hardships us boomers had to go through that the younger gamers just don't understand when you bring it up, right? So
Good God, boomers. Anyway,
I
so
love that name, man. When
it's
people call it an insult, I'm like, I kind of like it. Yeah, I'm a part of the
you
boomer
gotta dig it, huh?
generation. Yeah,
Gotta
like
dig it, huh? Gotta
I'm
dig
not
it.
against it. I'm not against it at all. So
It is what it is. Yeah, I mean, I don't take offense to it. At first, I'm like, no, I'm a Gen X, and then they laugh because because I wasn't a part of the inside joke.
yeah,
But then now I kind of understand, okay, I'm an old dude. I get it. Okay, whatever. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, but like I'm saying, shout out to Game Pass. Um, there was there's like 4 games. There was like 4 to 5 games that I wanted, right? Like, and they all came out around the same damn time. But because of Game Pass, I could go ahead and I could at least get 2 or 3 of those games. And then the other games, I could just go ahead and I could wait to get them later, or I could just go, or I could just play them just off the Game Pass. So one was the Shredder's Revenge, which we played that earlier
yeah, we did.
last week or this
Yeah,
past
we have
weekend.
5 people co-op on that one.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
So
And then of course Nakara with Blade Point, which I've been capping about that game, been loving it.
is that the battle royale with swords?
Yeah, it's the fighting game battle
When does
royale.
that come out? Next month, right?
No, it comes out tomorrow or tonight at
Oh, I
like 10 or
pre-downloaded it.
12 o'clock.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
It comes out tonight. So and then there was a World Slayer that comes out next week for or Outriders World Slayer.
That's on
So
Game
and
Pass?
well, that's not on Game Pass, but it's discounted on Game Pass. So I
Okay.
was like, okay, I got to get that, right? Like, I got to get it.
Yeah,
So
that was
I
fun.
went and got that. And then, of course, I had to make a choice because there was the Capcom collection that comes out tomorrow as well. And then there was DNF Fighters Duel that comes out next week. And then
Well, what's in
Final
Capcom
Fantasy.
Fighter collection or whatever?
It's 10 different games. It's $40. It's 10 different games. Unless you got uh some Game Pass points or Game Pass bucks, if you want to call them that or whatever.
Okay.
It's $40, but you get 10 games and you get all of the Darkstalkers games, even the Darkstalkers 3 game that was only in Japan.
Okay.
You get you get Street Fighter 2, you get all the older Street Fighters that's within that, like Street Fighter 2, like Street Fighter Hyper and all that. You also get and 2 other titles that has not ever been on console ever before, which I forget the name of them, but I remember seeing some of those characters guest on other fighters. And so with all those games included, and then you get Gym Fighter, Street Fighter Gym Fighter, and then there's another little game that goes with
So
it, but there's
is it
10 altogether.
included in
So
Game Pass or is it
no,
purchase only?
that you gotta buy. Yeah, that's purchase only. So
So, but Game Pass made
yeah,
it so you can purchase it.
right. That's the whole point I'm trying.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna wait to get that game probably sometime in June and July,
Okay.
sometime next month. But I went ahead and I got DNF Duel, which that was the game that I really, really wanted the
All right.
most. Which you know I'm about for that. I got that on PC, so I got like I said, I got I went ahead and bought Nakira, even though that's on Game Pass. I still bought it because just in case if that game ever goes away, I'm not gonna have to worry about it because I got it. And then I picked up DNF Duel, and then I picked up World Slayer, and then and then of course there's the Shadowrun games that I've been wanting to play. That's on Game Pass, but I don't have to buy those. And then of course the Turtles game, and then there's Sniper Elite 5, which I started to play, but I didn't got a chance to finish it. So I mean, there's just so many things. Like I'm just like, damn, all this stuff came out at one time, and I want it, and I got it, and I was like, I could make a budget to go ahead and do it instead of buy all this stuff or buy half of it and spend like up to upwards of $300. So I'm just like, Game Pass is just amazing. It's
Well,
just great.
what's also interesting is so like okay, say you play a bunch of it, but you secretly you want to own it, right? Like you want to have your
Right,
own
right.
license, right? Well,
Hmm.
next month, like everyone, most people live month to month, right? And
Oh yeah,
next month you can purchase those games at a discount,
right.
right? And that's something they don't talk enough about. I mean, people don't talk about enough on Game Pass is the discount associated
Mhm.
with purchasing the games. You know
So
what I
what
mean?
happened? Oh, your voice went away for a hot second. I didn't know what.
No, no, no,
I
no.
didn't know if
I'm
that's
just
what.
saying,
Okay.
like, we,
All right.
we don't talk enough about the discount you get when a
Oh
game
yeah.
game is essentially, uh, in Game Pass, you can purchase it afterwards and the discount associated with it. I don't think that's really part of the conversation a lot, but I think that has a lot of real value. Matter of fact, that has more value to me personally than Game Pass itself, right? Like just the typical, just downloading
Right.
the game and playing it.
Right.
Because I'm kind of more of a like, hey, I'll own it, I'll buy it if I want to play it. But there's situations like I mean, similar to yours where like I'm like, ooh, that wasn't in the plans this week, and it kind of snuck up on me, right? Like, because I
Right.
was committed to play Turtles with you, but I totally forgot. I'm like, oh crap, I had other things I was purchasing for the stream and YouTube
Hmm.
channel and stuff like that, and I just totally, it's not like I didn't have the money. I just chose to spend the money on other things and didn't think about it, right? And so next thing you know, I'm like, oh, it snuck up on me, and I'm like, no big deal. I was able to play it with you, and to be honest with you, I want to own it because that's something me and my wife can play. She likes a lot of like side scroller type games like that, beat 'em up
Hmm.
sort of thing. So, still gonna purchase it, and I'll get it at a discount slightly later. So it
Right.
save my bacon too. You know what I mean? So
Right. And then see also, I think a lot of people have already forgotten, which I just so happened just to run into last night when I was looking and seeing what games that because I was looking like, damn, all these games come together. But the Cowabunga collection comes out, I think next week or at the beginning of July. And the Cowabunga collection is all of those old the old arcade Turtles
the
games, uh,
originals,
the originals, and also some NES,
because
all those old NES
because
titles
the
as well.
Shredder's Revenge, it was kind of a hybrid. It was like a
Yes.
mixture of some. I'm like, I think I remember this, but it's not
Hmm.
quite the same and doesn't quite play the same. And so it's obviously they took a lot of heavy inspiration by the original arcade beat 'em ups. You know what I mean? So
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So it was it's so yeah. No, I'm just wanted to give Game Pass a shout out because I mean I'm just looking at it, just because at one time, Don, I had a problem. Like I was just buying them, just buying games like crazy, and then I'm like,
yeah,
I just have it for backup or whatever. And this is like, Mega Man, come on, and yeah, I would just game and see, and I think that's also too for people that are compulsive in whatever that they do. Um, that also helps them too because it's like you don't have to buy it, even though that there's people out there that want to try to pressure you to. Well, that doesn't show that you supporting the devs. Look, that's between Microsoft and the devs themselves. The devs put that game on that service, just like the devs are putting games on other services as
Yeah.
with PlayStation's new service, and then just with Stadia, and all the rest of them out there. So it's like that's between the devs and the companies out there on how they negotiate and what they go through.
You know
As a
what
consumer,
irritates
you just
me?
look at to see the value.
You know what irritates me from the dev side, because that's the world where I reside in, right? And
Mhm.
seeing devs guilting gamers to buy games at full pop at launch, right? You've seen a couple devs out there say, "Well, if you really want this game to be successful, that's what you do." No, 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 no. If you have a publisher, their job is to figure out how to make it accessible enough and make money off that product, right?
Right.
That's your publisher's job. That's not, you don't do the guilt trip thing up against the consumer, right? You have to find a way to have value for consumer. You know, we have you and I have the benefit of age on our side, right? We've seen things come
Right.
and go, right? For us, we saw the birth and the death of arcades, right? We've seen the
Hmm.
birth of rentals and the death of rentals, right? We've seen all these things. And one of the things where gaming strives, and this is the reason why I'm always kind of lower the ceiling of the cost of the game somehow for the consumer, so it's not as much of a risk for them to be able to purchase your product. But you know, why did arcades fail? Well, because they were expensive. They were
Yeah.
expensive to run. They were expensive for the consumer, right? It was, oh wait, you didn't have Street Fighter? Oh, sorry, man, you weren't the cool arcade, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to the other
Going
mall,
to the
right?
other arcade. Right. Right.
Exactly. And so why did consoles take off and take that place of arcade? Well, the reason why consoles took off is because the value proposition, right? You buy a console, you do the upfront cost, and it was $50 a game. Was that cheap for back in the mid to late 80s? No, it wasn't, right? But it was cheaper than the arcade, in the value proposition that you can do and the convenience to be able to do in your own home is the reason why it won out over time, right? It's the reason why a lot of people were renting games from Blockbuster, and then people go, "Well, developers are not seeing that money." Yeah, they do. They sell the copies to the to the uh, to the stores, right? And then they make money off the back. And what's interesting about this is it's kind of a hybrid between like a rental store, right? It But the difference is depending on what business model the publisher decides to do, they get a revenue, a cut of each one of those downloads. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So better the game performs, the better they can get it in more hands, the more they can encourage it. It's going to push Game Pass. It's going to push their profits in regards to it. And if it doesn't work for them, right? They do the grand experiment. It doesn't work for them. I'm not going to hate a publisher for deciding not to put something on Game Pass. They have to do what's right for their title, and they have to hedge their bets in whatever way that it can. And then I think it's the consumer's job to figure out financially what works for them in regards to that. And that's not just, people say speaking with your wallet or protest with your wallet. It's not really even about that. It's just, what makes sense for you, your day-to-day life, right? In regards to that. So if you're more of a risky title and you're not in the mainstream where people are thinking about you, maybe Game Pass or what Sony's doing on their side is a good way to go about it. In regards to that, because you have good product. Like, I mean, most developers believe their game's the shit, right? I mean, that's kind of the
Right.
blind side of all
Right.
developers. But
Right.
but at the same token, like the question is, how do we bridge that gap between how I feel about my product and getting the consumer to be able to feel the same way, and how do you reach them in regards to that? And I don't think there's one business model for every single type of game out there. I think we're going to get a lot of variety out there in the grand scheme of things. So
Oh yeah, no, and that's the one thing about it with these services is that they are providing a lot of variety already. I
yeah,
mean, PlayStation's coming out with what they have. There's already variety. There's value there as well. Some people might not feel like it's the same type of value as you would get from Game Pass, but I think over time PlayStation will get into its groove and will be a better service than what it is right now. But because I mean, look, it took Xbox what, about 4 years before they really started kicking into their stride and really started
Hmm.
making Game Pass noticeable to a lot of the audience. So I mean, so it's going to take some time for PlayStation, but yeah, but there's no question about, and I feel that this is going to be another narrative that's going to slowly die and fade away because the more and more that the PlayStation fans get invested into into their service over there on that platform, then I think the more and more that the people that always keep on trying to make this narrative of, or like you saying, like with certain devs or whatever, trying to force people to buy games like at, day one or whatever. That's going to all come to the end. I mean, because this is the future. There's no doubt. Like I've had other conversations with a lot of I can't say a lot, but several people privately, and they're starting to get it. Like, and all of them are older gamers like us. Like
Yeah.
they're like, look, we've all seen the evolution of of what gaming has been and what gaming has become. And so I think that for us, we're a little bit more open, or to see what's new that's coming. Now there's some things that we won't,
We
that,
used to
I'm
get
not into
excited
VR.
about
Yeah.
what was new, right?
Right.
Like, because
Right, right, right. Yeah.
we grew up in the generation of what I call the frontier of gaming, right? Where
Mhm.
it was undiscovered territory. There was always new game types or new game modes. Like, I remember when something was an overhead game versus, side scroller versus a beat 'em up. And I mean, I remember the birth. I mean, I know you're a big fan of fighters, right? But I remember the birth of Street Fighter. That concept of your character always facing your enemy. Does that make sense? And that was such a like, I'm like, why is the character not turning around when I was playing in the arcades? I'm like, oh, I had that like first 3 seconds of thought. And then I'm like, oh, this is a totally new genre. It makes all the sense in the world. And I think when you grow up with that, you tend to look towards what the next thing is. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, no, and that's like, I mean, for me, karate was the first fighter that I ever played. And that was the game that, like Street Fighter for you, but just going in, and and I told you about the game Pornoff, or
wait,
whatever
was
that
it
you
karate on the Nintendo, right?
karate was, but it was first in arcades. That's when I first actually played it.
Yeah, because like you,
Um
you had like a white gi,
yeah, the
essentially.
red gi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was like people throw daggers and stuff like that at you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay, you dump and duck and jump and yeah, I remember that game.
Right,
Yeah,
right. The controls were very, 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 very weird, but I know life that game so much. Oh man, it was really crazy. But I mean, just going back to the whole point of just like with Game Pass and the PSN Plus service, it's just that it is the future because it's just too much value into it. Like it just screams like this is it's like kind of like the birth of what we first seen with Netflix and their approach, and a lot of people thought that was weird. Even I did. Like, I mean, I could just drive down to the video store and just get the movies that I want. But then all of a sudden, when you get reminded when I go to that video store, and then let's say that the new hot movie gets dropped, they're all gone. You
E-
came in late, from
the
work.
empty
You're
shelf.
like, yeah, yeah, it's an
Yeah,
empty shelf, and you're like,
yeah.
man, and so you get that thought of like, man, I'm tired of sitting here waiting here for 40 minutes, hoping somebody would drop off, one of these movies or whatever, or games or whatever. So now you look at like Netflix, and you could just rent that game, or I mean, you could just order it online
Mhm.
or however, and then just have it sent to you. So it and then all of a sudden that took off, and that's just like how Game Pass, I feel, and what PSN is going to do, and is going to just change the game. And so, and also that, like I said, it brings that variety to the consumer that I feel that normally a lot of gamers don't really do because they're so comfortable within their wheelhouse. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like they're just kind of thinking of, like, I'm spending this money on this game because I trust this game is going to give me what I enjoy. And when you're looking at it from a person like you, like this game looks interesting, but I'll wait for a sale, or I'll probably just hear it, catch it, like if it comes free, free to play or something like that or whatever.
Well, then
Now with
you
these services, it changes, and you reward yourself with have an opportunity of getting into a new genre, and that's something that's new and a different experience for all different types of gamers, in my
Well,
opinion.
even when you run the risk of wait, right? Like let's say Game Pass didn't exist for a second. You run the risk of wait. Well, you also run the
Mhm.
risk of the consumer not even thinking about you anymore, right?
Right,
Because they get
right,
distracted by other things. So providing an experience where a customer feels good about a game, right? Let's say they didn't have all the time to finish it, but they play the game, and next thing they know, it's like, oh, I left a lasting good impression. So like they go back to Game Pass. Oh, damn, it's out of Game Pass. Well, I guess I have to buy it. I have no regrets buying it then. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So
right,
it just depends on the situation as a whole. It fills a hole that's been in gaming that we've experienced, right? The whole
right, right,
rental blockbuster experience sort of thing. But it brings it a level of convenience and just a ridiculously good value for consumers. And and a lot of people, like, people that fight over the consoles and stuff like that will tend to make fun of Phil for how many gamers. Was it 2 billion, or I forget what the number is he keeps throwing out there, right?
right.
Gamers out there, because it seems ridiculous, right? It's such a high number. But the reality, it's a real thing. The question is, how do you reach those? It's a volume thing, right? So can you make your money, the same amount of money or more, with volume at a lower price, or do you sell to an elite group of people, right, and try to make the same amount of money? And what Microsoft's doing is and Sony's starting to do it too, right? Like I don't want to like totally put Microsoft on a pedestal, because Sony's waking up to this, but
Right.
you know they're they realize, okay, there are different types of consumers and people, different ways to reach out to each one of those. And yeah, you may lose a couple of gamers that would normally just buy a game at launch, pay $60 or $70, right? But what you also get is you're getting this other revenue stream of these other gamers that may not even play things. um I have a good friend of mine, uh when uh when the power went out here last week, right? He
Mhm.
was playing games. He's like, man, this sucks. He goes, I can't play my Xbox. I'm like, well, just download this app. He was live streaming. He's like, this is great. In regards to, he doesn't have a Series S or X now, but he's just like, wait, I can just do this in regards to that. And I guarantee you, in 3 years, that would have been one of those people that just never upgraded to the next console, right?
Mhm.
Or because there's those type of gamers that just kind of get busy and they do other things, right? But they get excited about one or two games and they just don't buy a console. Just because, well, is it worth it for a couple of games? Well, guess what? That person's willing to pay for Game Pass. That person is now engaged with with the streaming service, and you know what? It keeps that customer engaged. You know what? He may buy a new piece of hardware because of that. And people don't think about that, right?
Yep.
All this stuff
Yep.
kind of feeds, it's all part of one ecosystem. You can't, like, this idea of separating streaming and separating Game Pass and separating consoles, separating like it just doesn't work, because they complement each other. It's a rising tide sort of thing. So if when each one of those do good, the other things also do better, right? And there's a little bit of overlap, but I don't think people should be that worried about it. I mean, the- you know,
No, 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 not at
growth and
all.
understanding of these things is, I think, if you're a super excited gamer, is probably the most healthy approach to have in it, right? It's not about having your team win. It's just, the question is, if we all play more games, we're all more engaged with one another, I think we all win. And then I think that's the general idea. I think people need to be more focused on, because that's the grand vision here, and that's the grand vision Microsoft's had for quite a while, how to accomplish it. They've gone through their woes, and Sony has the benefit of coming in second and seeing where Microsoft has made mistakes in the process, and how they want to implement it in their own way. So yeah, it's a good thing in regards to that. So doesn't matter what type of consumer you are, it benefits you.
Yeah, no, it definitely benefits. And I don't know. Like I said, I just wanted to give a shout out to it because I just was looking like, man, damn. I mean, I would have least gotten 4 of those games if it was the old way, and then just was like, well, I'll go ahead and I'll get the rest probably next week or something like that. But then and now I can just go ahead and because I really want to play. I just don't want to pay the $50 because I already bought Final Fantasy VII remaster on PlayStation, but I want to play it on the PC because I want to get that better experience, right?
Yeah.
So and then it got the upgrades and all that, and I'm like, oh, but then I was like, oh, that's right, DNF Duel is dropping. I'm copping that. That I have to get that. So and that comes out next week. So
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah. So really, 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 just really just happy about that whole situation. Can kind of bargain shop doing gaming and stuff like that. But let's move on. Let's talk about something that has been that's been on social media. It's I don't know it. To me, it's just ridiculous, but it's worth talking about, especially since you're a developer. Um, and that's about Forza Motorsport. And uh, there was this controversy about them coming out and saying that the gameplay that they showed on one of the events. I don't know if it was the second one or the first one for the Xbox Bethesda
The
showcase.
second one, they repeated the same thing, so they're one and the
Okay,
same. So just to be
okay.
clear.
Well, no, no, I thought that they showed something else though too, but regardless,
No,
whatever.
I
Because
watched it. I'm a big Forza nut,
okay,
so
okay,
I
okay,
watched the.
okay,
It's one
okay,
of the few ones I watch post in regards to that, and
okay.
all the ins and
All
outs.
right. Well, regardless, they came out and they told, and they came out and they said that look, the game that we seen was running off of a PC. Well, then that got people to question. Well, why would you say to the public that this game is an Xbox Series X game, but yet it's running on PC? That seems like it's fraudulent. Digital Foundry came in and gave their critique about it and made it seem like that um uh Turn 10 was being disingenuous. And so it's been this back and forth on
Uh,
Twitter all this week so far. So what is your thoughts, this initial thoughts about this? Because I mean, I'll give mine after yours, but
I think
what do you think, man? Do
I
you
think
think that Turn 10
transparency
is
is
tripping
key.
out?
Yeah, well, transparency
Mhm.
should be
Okay.
key, right? Like and if you trip up on your own words, own up to it sooner than later.
Right.
And keep it moving. Now, does it bring things into question? Sure, there's nothing wrong with that as a consumer. I don't think that's unhealthy in regards to that. But the same token, to totally dismiss what you're going to get on your home consoles, I don't think it's healthy either, right? It's not like the pendulum has to swing one way or completely the other, right? Like let's be a little more grounded, a little more centered on these sort of things. Ask the question like, what type of hardware was it running on, right? What was it demonstrating, right? There was the continuous reel that we all saw where they had the gameplay and they had the fly around camera and kind of show off the world with uncuts. They want to show what the engine can do as a whole. And then they did another one, which was kind of a sizzle reel. Does that make sense
Yeah.
of gameplay? And there's controversy in between that because there's a quality difference between the sizzle reel and what you saw on the continuous cut. Ever so
Mhm.
slightly on very nitpicky things, typical things that Digital Foundry would nitpick on, and get it from a questioning standpoint. I get it from maybe they should have been a little bit more clear. And as I said, like transparency is key on gaming. I think we should know if it's a real time gameplay, if it's this, or if it's on this piece of hardware. Just so people can be just kind of transparent about it. And then there's always going to be naysayers. It doesn't matter what the product is because people take sides. That's human nature in regards to that. But the whole ray tracing conversation is just so many different takes on it, and I haven't found a good one to be honest with you. A Digital Foundry, like what was arguing, it was like it's a low form of ray tracing because it's more of a mirror type image they were showing, and like they were trying to show disc brake rotors, right? And then they show on the sizzle reel they had more of a blurred out version, and he's like, well, that's more expensive form of ray tracing. I'm like, how do you know? You don't know what their pipeline is. You don't know what techniques they implement, or if they implemented a new technique. All you did was look at a previous PC game that wrote additional code to adapt ray tracing to their engine, essentially, right? and you're making a direct correlation to that. That's not educated. That's not a smart way to go about it. Because if you look, so from a background, so understand how ray tracing works in real time on hardware, essentially, right? There's a couple different things to cover. So what typically is, you ever see a camera where footage where the gain run too high and everything looks kind of pixely and it's kind of that
Mhm.
noise to an image.
Yeah.
That's actually the raw processing typically when you run ray tracing with these ray tracing cores you've seen with AMD and NVIDIA and you know what PlayStation can do and Xbox can do, right? It looks like that, right? It looks like a video image that has very grainy, like little pixels over the place. And then what they have is what they call a denoiser. And so basically they're using compute power to look at that noise and say, okay, we're going to correct that noise, right? And so to start doing color correction, start filling in. Matter of fact, this podcast uses the same denoiser from a NVIDIA card for our cameras right now,
Mhm.
so they don't look so grainy, right? It's to help crisp and clean it up. Matter of fact, that denoiser that they use in ray tracing, it's not, obviously our cameras are not ray tracing, but uh, that denoiser, it can be used in 2D images as well, right? Like what you and I have right now on the podcast. And
Mm.
you know, if you go look at the raw footage on for example, Discord right now, and you go look at the video footage of the podcast later, you'll see that there's a difference in quality there, and that's me using a denoiser essentially to clean up the image. And most ray tracing is done that way, right? That's traditionally the pipeline. But let's say if you wanted to do a blurry version of a ray trace image like they were showing on those replayed cutscenes with the rotor not being like a mirror like type surface, but more of like kind of a muddy surface, right? But
Mhm.
it has the ray trace reflections coming through, more like kind of like a unpolished piece of aluminum, right? You still see some reflection through the metal, but it's not like a mirror.
Right.
There's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can do the traditional way where you do the ray tracing, you give the instruction, it has a very grainy type look to it that runs through a denoiser, and that's typically how you get that crystal clear looking mirror looking type reflection, right?
Mhm.
And then you can do and the reason why they said it was more expensive to make it kind of blurry looking, they can do post process on top of that, which kind of blurs the image, blurs the reflection, right? To make it look more of a different type of surface on there. Now, or what you could do is not run it through a denoiser at all and just blur the ray tracing. See what I'm saying? So you cut out
Mhm.
that additional step, right? And now that additional step can be used on, say, other surfaces for ray tracing. See, there's two different ways to do that pipeline. And this is what
Interesting.
so this is what irritates
Hmm.
me, right? Because like
Right.
you don't need to clean up the image if you're just going to blur it again. If you get what I'm saying. And so there's going to be these new techniques that these developers are, people making engines are going to do. And I don't think people realize or understand it. So to have that sort of take is just arrogant.
Mm.
That's what it is, right? You can't just take what you've seen on PC previously before and say this is how they're doing it. This
Right.
is not how the technology progress. And then I have had seen people like in the media and stuff like that, and not to totally call them out because I think they mean well. But they were going off and saying, to be honest with ray tracing is just a gimmick used for marketing. And we're like, no,
Oh
that's
yeah, you hear that a lot. Yeah.
yeah. And then I'm like, that's bullshit. That's total bullshit, right? This is something in real time graphics we've been dreaming of. Matter of fact, prior to all this kind of coming about, I didn't even think we'll ever see ray tracing ever, right? In my
Mhm.
lifetime, in real time, I didn't think that was really a possibility that was on the table. I was proven wrong, and I'm grateful it's been proven wrong. I love the technology. But when people say, "Well, you just take too much of a performance hit," you understand that you used to have to take a whole entire day to render a ray trace image, right? And you're getting it
Wow.
in real time. Like, come on, like you're not keeping things in perspective of what's going on there. And then And then people just kind of look at, well, it's just for shinier puddles. I'm like, no, you can do with all sorts of different stuff. It can be used for ambient occlusion. It can, all these different type of lighting effects in regards to that. And so what developers are doing is they're trying to understand how to use ray tracing sparingly where it's the most effective for their games, right? And then through that process, sometimes they may learn newer alternative lighting techniques as well, that don't have quite the same overhead costs. Like Unreal Engine does Lumen, right? But far as I understand in the code, it still uses a lot of these like ray trace cores to make Lumen work, right? So if it weren't for the push for ray tracing, you wouldn't see this push for Lumen. If you get where I go, so they help they help each other out in regards to that. And so there's always a mixture of when ray trace is used with a standard rasterized image and ray tracing usually are mixed in conjunction with one another. And if you're an artist, you learn to try to figure out what's the most effective way to use that particular tool set to get the best image quality that you're looking to do. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Because not every surface has normal maps, right? Well, normal maps are great, but not every surface uses them. So like, you use it sparingly, it's another tool. Or if you talk about subsurface scattering, right? It's a basically a material attribute that allows you to essentially, like our skin, you and I, our skins are actually a translucent material in real life, right? But it has so
Mhm.
many different layers in it. That's how we get the pigment that we have, right? And so that's why on video games, like skin always looks really gross. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It never
yeah,
looks right.
yeah.
But when you're able to apply a subsurface scattering to it, and with the right set of instructions, you can get very realistic kind of uncanny valley effect with skin. But that can also be used, say, on plastic, right? Like if you go back to Forza, you can go back to the orange cones that use subsurface scattering. If you go back and look at it, you can see how the light kind of shimmers and comes through the material. Does that make sense? To the point where like the tip of the cones you see that glow, and then it becomes more solid and different attributes of the cone and the way the light's hitting it. So all these sort of things, like it's always a mixture of techniques. I don't think we should be belittling ray tracing in any sort of shape, form, or fashion. It's up to the developers to try to figure out what's the best application and use of this technology for their particular game. I think that should be the thing. Marketing people, sure, are going to talk about features that are unique to their game, especially if you're early on the market for it, right? You're going to tout those sort of things. And just like HDR, like some people are going to, some developers are going to be able to implement ray tracing better than others, right? And that's just kind of the harsh reality in regards to this. And there's different steps of what we're going to see on development on ray tracing, right? We're going to see take an existing engine, right, and basically patch it in ray tracing into the pre-existing engine, right? Then you're going to see the next level where you're going to see, and this is what Forza is starting to do now. That's why people always have kind of this denial process, is they tear down the engine and redo the pipeline for that particular type of technology, and it becomes more proficient, right?
Right.
And then you're probably also working with very particular hardware where they had certain things in mind when they developed it. And so you do have that working for it. Sony's games will go through the same process. Does that make sense? So what I don't want is people dismissing what Forza's doing, but eventually you're going to see from Sony as well. And, in regards to that, it just, because then you get into that weird narrative argument. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where someone has they complain about something, and they just kind of paint themselves in the corner because they really love a particular piece of hardware, and then when the other thing does it, it paints them in the corner and it makes them look foolish, in regards to this. So no, ray tracing is here to stay. It's going to be implemented more. Matter of fact, if anything, ray tracing threatens a lot of lighting artists' job down the road, in
Oh,
regards to, because you don't
well,
need as many. Because here's the thing, because like a lighting artist has to decide how a material is going to be illuminated, how the light's going to be placed, how to optimize certain things and different types of effects of what you're trying to accomplish. Eventually, we're not there yet, but eventually we'll get to the point where they'll put ray tracing in a game. I can hire Key Maker with zero experience in an Unreal and just have him drop a light source in, and he just everything works, right? And that's what, and it's going to look correct in regards to all Key Maker is doing is the color of the light and the brightness of light and the placement in the world. That's all you're doing. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
like
Yeah.
that whole streamlined process. I mean, and so there's such huge benefits to ray tracing in regards to it's something, it's what made movie special effects look believable, right? It's one of the biggest attributes that made movie special effects believable is
Hmm.
you're able to do realistic lighting for what you're compositing in a scene, and you're able to match that kind of that light source of what you're doing in real world, and that's where that, because we also then grew up with special effects, right? How special effects look like crap, right? And look out of place, out of place, out of place until the point where like you watch a modern day Marvel movie, it looks good. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Looks great. All
so
right. Yeah. I mean, that was a lot. That was a lot of information to gather. I mean, but it makes sense, of course. It's and that to me was where the biggest issue comes is that it's like Gran Turismo is just not the same game as what it was years ago. Now it still plays the same. It plays a little bit better than the previous games. And I guess when you look at it from that standpoint, if you're going back to the nostalgia, you're still pleased that that game still operates the same somewhat as what you remember. But graphically, it still kind of has that look with it looks a little bit better, or I should say better than what the previous, but not that much of a leap compared to when you look at a game like Forza 2 or Forza 1, and then you look at Forza Horizon 5.
but
Or when you're going to look and see what you see with Forza before Forza Motorsport. Like, I mean, the gap is just tremendous. You don't see that much of a gap, um, if we're being honest, between the previous installment, which was Sport, to Gran Turismo 7. It's not the same.
the
What was
the
you gonna
way
say?
the way I look at it is it's always
Oh,
been better than the previous one, right?
yeah.
It hasn't took a step back visually, right? But it hasn't been able to keep up with the Jones.
Well, no, okay. Well,
That you
let
get
me
where I'm saying with that, like it
well,
as a
let me push
franchise.
back on that.
Okay,
Sport was looked at as like, yo, this is just something that PlayStation just throwing in here because they want to get, I guess online gaming and want to try to get microtransactions in.
yeah,
Because when you go back and you look at the PlayStation 3 ports or versions, Spec and the previous one before that, they looked fantastic. Like that was state of the art back then. Nobody can say sport was state of the art graphically. You know
but
what I'm saying? And that to me is where dri- driving games has to be a showpiece. And the game doesn't look awful. That's not what I'm trying to say.
no, it's
But
not.
it just doesn't. But it doesn't hold up to the competition
That's
of
what I
what
mean.
we've seen from other
That's what I mean by keeping
developers and
up
what
with the
they're pushing.
Jones,
Yeah.
right? Like
Oh, okay.
it's like
Yeah.
keeping
Yeah.
up with
Yeah.
your neighbors, right? Like, oh, that
All
person
right.
got a new car. Oh man, maybe I should get a new car, right? Like it's that sort of thing. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's not a bad game or anything like that. It's they'll always continuously improve, but it hasn't been able to keep up with what's been going on with the genre. I mean, even on the PC front, you're seeing other games kind of challenge it to some degree
Right.
in regards to that. So yeah, I mean, Forza's great. It's one of my most anticipated titles for 2023. In regards to that, I'm a big fan of take the time that you need for the product. But I think we get into a weird place though when we start comparing the consoles, right? That's where all the stupid arguments are coming from, right? You can't look at the accomplishments as just simply accomplishments because somebody has to do something to try to dismiss what they're doing over there,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because they feel threatened in some sort of form or fashion. Then we can't just celebrate. We can't just take a break and just celebrate gaming for a bit, right?
No.
In regards to that, like the fact that you're getting real time ray tracing and the fact that here's the thing: we have to get a lot of things confirmed. But is it running at 4K 60? I mean, is that what's going on with full time? Is it ray trace reflections or this
Wow.
or that? Or how are they doing it? Right? Like, what is the nuts and
Hmm.
bolts of it? It's still an accomplishment, regardless of how you break it down. In regards to that, and there's like, that should be exciting to gamers, right? Like, because guess what? That's coming to the PlayStation eventually. On
Yeah.
what game, I don't know, right? On what engine, I don't know, right? But if it can be done, that's what the competition is going to drive.
Right.
In regards to that, and if Gran Turismo was the first one to actually accomplish that, I would be toting it as well, right? And that's not
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not my racer, right? Because that competition is going to bring it out of the other side in regards to that. So I don't look at the other side for validation of the products I'm interested in. Does that make sense? Like
Oh yeah. No.
I'm
No.
just looking to play the games I want to enjoy. So I think it should be something celebrated in regards to that. I think it's something. I think when they did the interview, I think this girl nailed it. Right? She said sometimes it's just mind blowing how ray tracing can look, and then sometimes it's it doesn't move the needle. Like you don't see it on the radar, right? Because we have these other alternatives of lighting techniques that kind of fake it. You know what I mean? Get as close as we
Hmm.
possibly can with more overhead. So, there's not a one solution for all this sort of stuff, and it eventually will be. Eventually, ray tracing will take over all lighting types down the road, just because it just be cheaper to produce. We're not talking about overhead. We're talking about labor, right? Like that.
Yeah.
People talk about the cost of games, right? Like, oh, if you can make things more less technical and easier for people to plug and play, and that means less staff, and that means you know basically you're making more money. So I mean, eventually it's all going to go that way. I don't know how far, probably 3 or 4 generations of hardware before we kind of get to that point, but we're going that direction. So
Yeah. Also, it's just to me is it's kind of crazy because Turn 10, if there's any studio that knows Xbox hardware, it's Turn 10.
mhm.
Like they are the pinnacle when it comes to, I mean, some people would go ahead and say the coalition, and they're good. I mean, I would say more if a coalition knows how to use the Unreal Engine, probably better, probably the best than anyone. But when it comes to the Xbox hardware itself, it seems like Turn 10 is in the office or is in the room where all the architects are, the engineers it is observing it itself because they know how to push whatever game that whatever
They have a
hardware
lot.
that it's been,
They
they
have
push
they
it, right?
they have
They
a
got a
lot
lot
of
of influence
influence
as well.
on that.
Right,
So
that was
and
the word that I was going to trying to get to.
But
Yeah.
I think you're right though with coalition as well. I mean, why
Mhm.
separate to one group, right? Like it seems like the coalition and Churn 10, those two studios in particular, have a lot of influence on the hardware that Microsoft is doing in regards to that.
Right.
They may not
And
get
that's why
everything they want, but they have some influence.
no,
So
but
yeah, so
but that was the point that I was trying to make was trying to just say that how can anybody not trust into Turn 10 and what they've brought out to the public? Like, I mean, you could try to question because this was running on the PC. Trust and believe, every time that their product has came out in the wild on an Xbox console, everybody has been amazed or they've been pleased to say like, okay, this game runs excellent on this hardware. So I said that like I can understand if this was like a new studio that's trying to get into that Xbox just purchased or whatever, and they're trying to show improve on the next big racer. But we're talking about Turn 10. Like I just pump the brakes, people. Relax. That's just like
yeah,
if Sony, like the difference between the studio that made Drive Club and then you looked at the studio that made a good Gran Turismo. Like, I mean, Drive Club, beautiful looking game, but the car driving mechanics were nowhere near as fluid or crisp as it was if you got the game made by by how do you
polyphony.
say that, Polyphony?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You trust what they do. It's just that for me, I feel that Sony is just not as engaged with polyphony as though Microsoft is with Turn 10. Now, some people will try to debate me on that, but I mean, all you got to look is the product in hand. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and see what kind of and see what we see and how those games play and what the individuals which is pretty much just as important as it's just the gameplay. So I don't know. But I just, great discussion.
I
Great
mean,
discussion.
yeah,
Great
I mean, you
discussion.
should judge studios based on their individual track history, right?
Right.
No,
Right.
no puns
Right.
intended, right? Like
Right.
if a studio has an issue with, like for example, let's 343, right? Like,
Hmm.
well, their last game hasn't been very content complete, right? So if they release a new
No.
product, say next week, I'm going to question if the content's going to be there or not, right?
Right.
In regards to it, and that's based on their track record, so they have to earn that back, right? The same token, then you can say, well, Turn 10's on the opposite end of that spectrum, right? Where like they've always delivered, they always innovated, they always like bring a good experience. I mean, they've had some shortcomings on online play and stuff like that, and that's something they still, I think, kind of struggle with. So it's one of those things I hope they get right with this next one. But you do it based upon their track record, what they've done, and you set your expectations accordingly. You know what I mean, and make the expectations based upon that, not nothing else, nothing more. So
Yeah. Well, I just my last point. When you look at it, when you look at what Forza has done, not only with Horizon but with World of Sport, there will be people that will tell you that you can see the progression within Forza
hmm
in both games.
it's tangible, is what you're saying.
Right. With Gran Turismo, like people would come out and say that 7 is going in the right direction as GT Sport was the setback, compared to when you had Spec and then when you had,
Yeah.
Gran Turismo on the PlayStation 3. So that's the difference right there is that, one company is trying to get back into where they used to be to have that footing. And yeah, they'll still sell well and and it's still popular franchise, but it just seems that it's not as popular as it was at one time while Forza franchise it keeps surging. So, that's just what it is. But all right, so since you brought up Halo, we might as well
Oh,
talk about it. Yeah, I know.
I feel like we always beat up on it, and that's yeah.
Yeah, no, and I don't
I don't
want
want to.
to, but
I
I
don't want to
mean,
be that person. You know what I mean? So
but when you hear this type of news, as a Halo fan, you have to be honest. And at this point in time, as much as I love Halo and I really do enjoy Infinite, the fact of it is that I haven't put that much time into this season 2. I've put in I think I'm level 40, 42, 43.
okay,
This if the season 1 on Halo Infinite, that was already done. So it's just kind of,
it's
you know, it
it's
there's
petering
just some
out for
issues
you.
there.
Is what's going
Well,
on. The
well,
the
yeah,
engagement.
the engagement aspect of it is I would say, well, maybe I guess the word is it is petering out, but I just want some information to wet the palate to make me say, okay, I'm back in, I'm all in.
hmm
Here we go. We want to at least be playing at least 4 or 5 times a week. So anyway, but let me go ahead and read some of this information. All right, now these are rumors. But these rumors has been going around even on bigger sites and everything like that. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about it because we haven't talked about it yet.
Okay.
Okay, so coming up here, there'll be 2 OG maps, plus 60 players in this. I don't know if it's going to be a battle royale or if it's going to be kind of like what we played with on that other mode. I forgot what that mode was called, which I actually like that mode.
I think it's just going to be a big team mode. I think
Mhm.
people. I mean, doesn't mean you can't take inspiration from these other game types, right? They exist out there and are pretty popular, but the reality is if you don't have some sort of innovation in that space as your own product, that you always look at as being clout chasing. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
you won't be part of the conversation. You'll be kind of just something else. You know what I mean? So just another one.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's something with a lot of players. So that's all we primarily know. So,
All right. So, it says 60 players in BR. So, and it says fall of 2023 at the earliest. Um, and it will have tiered loot drops. It says now this is the more interesting thing right here. Campaign DLC after 2024. No plans earlier this year. Fighting endless on a varied world, and Joe Staten fully in charge of this. Thoughts? What do you think?
I'm not a big fan of Satan.
Yeah,
I,
I've
I,
heard you say that before.
and
Yeah.
I want to be
So
even most respectful as I possibly can, but his
yeah.
track record recently has not been on par with games as a service.
Hmm.
What his involvement with Crackdown, his involvement with Halo. There's a history, there's a trend that we're seeing here where he'll get a product out, but he doesn't have a long term plan after that, right? you know and you may have heard problems at these studios, like I'm not naive to that fact that he may hear problems with working on Crackdown. That's why he was put on there, to get a product out, right? You may
Yeah.
hear problems with 343 when dealing with Halo Infinite. um but okay, he was a closer, he gets something out the door. But it's always left to die. You know what I mean? Like, there's just and that's been his history, right? And he has a long history in gaming and game development and stuff like that. But um, where this new direction where gaming's going, he just doesn't have a good track record on that, right? He still has to prove that to me on an individual level. So doesn't give me a lot of hopes to hear that he's evolved with it. In regards to that, I hope he has enough supportive crew that can help him out and help him get a new product, or maybe he'll do better if he's there from ground up, working on it. So we'll see. My opinion on may change. We'll see how that goes. So I'm not a huge fan of his approach to things. Um, but 343 needs to do something like this. This is what I've been mentioning before, is they need to have something that kind of re stokes the fire. Does that make sense? That does a big splash, right?
Mm.
And so what it seems like to me, what's going on here is, if these rumors are to be believed,
Right.
is that the multiplayer, it just kind of has its own course, its own life. It's going to carry from iteration from Halo Infinite to, say, let's call it Halo Infinite 2, right? Like the multiplayer is just going to be continuous. Does that make sense? It's
Right.
still going to be free to play. It's going to be continuous. It's going to be iterative. And then the campaigns are just standalone experiences, essentially. That's, I think, the approach that they're doing. And what they're trying to do is fundamentally take care of all the foundational stuff of all the multiplayer stuff. And so when they're ready to do their next big push, right, they can have it with a nice, clean campaign that everyone can get on board with. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And it kind of reunites that fire under Halo. And by that time, since you're not starting over on the multiplayer type stuff, it's iterative instead of you know different different iterations, I should say. Like, let's say iterative in the sense of that it's continuous. Then you're not starting over when you release your next campaign, in regards to that. And then we were both talking about how games need time, and we're okay with it. We're
Right.
okay with turn 10 taking time. We wish Halo Infinite took a little bit more time, right? In the
Right.
grand scheme of things, as you reflect back, in regards to that. So if the rumor's true that it's a standalone campaign and it's going to be, not going to see it till 2024, so be it. As long as it's good. That's what I expect of them. And so, at least good content, solid content. If it needs more time, so be it. The nice thing is they're not building an engine from the ground up. They're, whatever they have foundational, they're going to be iterative at this point on going forward, and that's kind of been a big push for 343 and what's going on with the Slipspace engine. So
Yeah, like I mean, again, this is a rumor. These things coming out. I mean, there will be other people saying that there's other sources to get this information from, and they seem to be more um legit, or or not, as I should say,
Well,
343 negative, right? And as
yeah,
both of us are 343 supporters, like they're like, I cap for 343, you do too.
yeah.
But it is clear, it is absolutely clear that there's been something that happened in between, somewhere in production, where, of course, where we've seen clips of where the game, where we both thought like, damn, why did they take that out? Why did they, that would have been really, really cool to find different fragments of Cortana, or why, or why would they try to
Some of the earlier
find way.
stuff that were prototyping that were seemed pretty cool.
Right,
Right, yeah.
right, right. And so that's, for me, it's one of those things where it's just kind of like, we see that there's been things taken out, and there's certain parts into the Halo story which I do enjoy. Halo Infinite, I think it's a great story. It's not one of my favorites, of course, but there was, if you add some of the things, you can tell that there's some pieces that's missing that they could have added to make the game feel more
It felt like they
full.
played it
You
really
know what I'm saying?
safe, and
They played it too
they
safe.
played it
Right.
safe, and it's more of that will do. It's
Oh,
the
right.
impression I got from the game, and
Right.
so, and that's me as a Halo fan. It's not what I typically take away from a Halo. Like I find
Mhm.
inspiration as a creator, right, from other artists in the industry, and Halo is one of those games that I look to. They're just like, man, look at what they're doing, right, and I've
Mhm.
liked every iteration of all the main Halo first person shooter games, because there's some twin stick shooters and strategy
Right.
games, um, but this is in the grand scheme of things, this is definitely not my favorite. I like 4 and 5 better, and I like this probably better than 3. In regards to
Oh,
that,
I definitely like Infinite better than 3. Yeah, no,
yeah,
for me, yeah.
yeah, but like you know, so I mean that's kind of how I look at it. Like 4 is my favorite, all around. 5
Mhm.
multiplayer was phenomenal. I think it's the one of the best. Infinite is kind of, and even on the multiplayer, like it just doesn't. It's fun, right? It's not bad, but it's missing something. Does that make sense? And there's something that, like, as time as you play it, you just like it just doesn't have those same hooks that keeps you coming back like 5 did or 4 did.
Well, that it's
Yeah.
Maps, Forge,
Well, that's
you know what I'm
part of
saying?
it,
Like, you know what I'm saying?
but
That's
I think
Warzone,
I
so,
think I
that
think
need
it's
those
core
things.
gameplay though. I think it's a core gameplay thing
No,
that's missing
I
there.
think the core gameplay is great. Now, I do feel that also, though, too, Maps, like, we disagree on this one.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think the map aspect of it, it needs more maps. There needs to be more variety of guns, to like switch it up on the
No, I
levels
would
if
agree
you
with
gotta
you
go
on that
back.
one. They're a little light
Yeah,
on the gun variety for sure.
right. That's probably where you get that aspect of like this. I just need a little something more, because they're so like, it's, for me,
I think it's the
it's
pickups.
like,
But
well,
go ahead, but I'll explain later.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
a
No, like, for me, it's more of it's more of the thing, like it's e-player eccentric, or me
It does
e-player
have that.
friendly.
Hmm.
And I know Halo 5 had the same way, but this seems to me like, because they don't change the difference in the weapons, that this is what they're catering to. And to me, it's like what I say with fighters. It's like, you know what, then have them have their own separate, you know, placement, to where they can have what they want to. But for, as a person who isn't into esports, have it to where we have a little bit more variety, to where it's more fun and pleasurable. And then when we do pick up that crazy gun that we might not know how to shoot, but if we get those couple of kills, that's what brings the elation.
So
That's what
like
brings the fun.
so the
Yeah.
e-player lobby is basically what you're saying.
Right, like that's what, like, well, when I talk about the gun drops, right? Like, they don't change the guns. to make it to seem to make it to where everybody can get a chance to play every gun. They just have it to where it's the same gun in the same locations every time,
Yeah.
and that's more esports friendly. And I know that some people would, and I don't mind the pushback if people disagree with me on that. But I feel though consumers just kind of want, something a little bit more. And like I said, the stage thing is abysmal. I know that they got what 10 stages, 10 or 11 stages right now.
I haven't
Um,
kept track.
but with all those classic stages, it to me it's an embarrassment not to have some of those classics already put in there, and to be put because that's right there, like somebody just dropped the ball on not thinking about that. Like, okay, so we're just going to let these people play these same maps. We'll add a map or two every 6 months. That's not going to fly. That's not how people, that's just not how they get down with that. Like, especially if you're trying to get Halo into this online service, you got to have a lot of variety. And, and I don't know. And I know how you feel about the different outfits and things like that. I think that that's refreshing in a sense because you don't have to look at the same things over and over again, and not every Spartan looks the same. But I also do look at some of the things that they offer, and some of them just don't look cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, like today,
It's getting to you some at a certain point now. You're like, oh.
yeah, like there was
Yeah, I gotcha.
I looked today. There was somebody made a joke and said it looked like a Nokia phone, and it was like a piece that goes onto your helmet, like towards your chin, and it did look like a little Nokia phone. Like, I mean, you want me to play 10 to 5 to 10 hours to get that? Like, I mean, there's just certain things to me
The
that
incentive's
throws
not.
me off.
Yeah, the
Yeah, the
incentive's not
incentive is not
there.
that there, right
And
there yet.
then
Not quite yet.
and then my argument's always been on the aesthetic portion like that when they do, I would say, things that are outside of the lore, I guess is the best way I would describe it, right?
Mhm,
That
mhm.
it draws people out of it. Obviously, they engages certain people. There's no doubt about it. But you know, the things I would like to see is they have to get the desync thing taken care of. That's got to be fixed. Like that's an issue with your engagement. I feel like the equipment thing, I get where they're going with it, but what it does is it just means I engage with people with one less skill, right? And it makes me feel like that fight that happens back and forth just less engaging, right? And for me, like there, it doesn't have to be thrusters, but like you have to have something, right? And the majority of the time, people I'm killing don't have something, and so it just doesn't quite have that engagement that gets drawn out a little bit longer, especially at the beginning of the matches. And so those are the things that kind of keep me from like, ugh, I don't want to turn on to, um, it's just not engaging for me. In regards in gun variety would contribute to that as well.
Yeah.
In regards to that, and the, it's just not there. It's just not it. And then it's not releasing content at the pace of Halo 5, let alone anything else. You know what I mean? So it just feels like it's just behind the ball. Like Halo 5, in the same period of time, we got a lot more content, right? And
Right.
in Halo Infinite, we're not getting it at that same. I would say Halo 4, we got more content in that same time frame as well, and that wasn't even held in high regard. So it's that sort of stuff that's you know I have no reason to hate the game, but I'm just like it's just not my favorite, and it's waning my confidence in the product overall in regards to that. And then other people obviously love it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Enjoy it,
Mhm.
in regards to that. And and as much as I brag about Halo 5 and how much I like Halo 5, and I try to compare it to that, but the reality is, I got my playtime out of Halo 5. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like, so now that it's kind of dead that Infinite came out, like, I'm not really mad about it because to be honest with you, I've gotten plenty of good times with Halo 5, and I got my use out of it. So I'm not upset about that. I just wish Infinite was more than what it is. So
Well, it will be. That's just the whole point. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it will eventually, but then it comes to what you said and alluded to is well, how many people will still stick around?
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially like Overwatch is finna drop here this year. Then
Call
of
of
course
Duty.
you still have and then Call of Duty's coming, and then of course now, there's the people that plays the sides. Now Call of Duty is eventually now going to be a part of Xbox. Now, will that be you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that the slow playing with one of the most beloved titles on Xbox is just bewildering to me. And like I said, and the gameplay is amazing to me. I love the gameplay. Like I said, I know you feel a little differently, but
Yeah.
I love that gameplay. I think that gameplay is solid because I knew that the old Halo guard was not gonna was only gonna bitch and complain about not wanting to be anything like Halo 5. But I also did not want because I still see people bitch about the power walk. Like, no, get away from that. The walk is dead. Like, go play the old stuff. But it's like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They
There's Master
did
Chief
it. They
Collection, and that
Yeah,
has a
yeah,
thriving
yeah.
community. PC
Right.
really kind of pumped a vitamin B shot into it, and it has a thriving community now. So
But look how long that took. Well, you know what I'm saying? Because I mean,
that's
when
what
that game
worries
first
me.
released, and see that's I mean, people will still come to Halo Infinite. That's not a question, but compared to what it was when all the hype and anticipation was right there, and then you look at the situation now and it's a slow drip, slow drip, slow drip. And that's why in this part right here it says like, you know, Forge, it is basically like they're depending on Forge to kind of hold the guard until they get everything put together, which Forge will be amazing. Forge will definitely will light a candle under Infinite's ass. But the thing of
I'm
it
torn on
overall is
Forge
that
too.
you're what?
I'm torn on it.
Well, this is my first time hearing you talking about you torn on it.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I want them
Where
to
did that
take.
come from?
No, I want
You've
them
been
to.
excited about it.
No, I
Yeah.
want them to take their time so it's solid, right? Like you can get
Right.
amazing content out of it, right? Um,
hmm
but the same token, they needed it yesterday.
Oh yeah. No.
They're like in a
Yeah.
not win situation with it. Is it, if you get what I'm saying with that?
Oh well, I won't go that far. I won't go that far. No, no, because they they need it as soon as possible.
Yeah,
But once it drops, it's gonna it's gonna definitely kick up the player amount. Like, I mean, everybody's gonna
if
really
it
tap into it, right?
if it if it if it's released to the potential it's supposed to be, right? Like that's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Like
Okay.
if they treat Forge kind of like how they treated the launch of Infinite, it it's not going to give them what they ultimately. It's going to help them, but it's not going to give them ultimately what they need, which is a huge vitamin B shot in regards to and the same
B12, huh?
yeah, B12. They need that B12, man. But the same token, like I get it, like people are starving for content now, like so like
Right.
I just don't see how no matter what they do with it, it's going to be perceived as the wrong move. Does that make sense?
Well, that's why I constantly say, Don,
Yeah.
343, just do what you got to do. Just do what you want to do. Stop listening. I listen enough to where you can get some really good ideas. But the story aspect of it, stop taking shit out just for those people because what they do is they complain, they bitch, they moan, and then they leave and they never come back. And then they'll come out and then when let's just say that the game gets back to its high popularity again, then they'll come out and they'll say, "Well, it's okay, but it isn't. It's not a Bungie Halo." They'll still complain.
Well, I'm
So
not
there's no
worried about
need to
that.
listen to them. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not worried.
but
I'm not.
343 seems to be.
I'm not
That's the
worried about
problem.
them. I'm worried about the people that actually would be willing to play your game. Like that's what I'm looking at from the perspective is those
Yeah.
people, right? You know, and if you wait too long for those guys that are been patiently waiting, they're going to get run out of patience for you, right? Like they actually
Oh
like your
yeah.
game, but they're going to run out of patience with you. In the same token, there's a risk reward of waiting longer for Forge because if you wait longer for Forge, you have a lot of variety and you can really expand the game I'm trying to dance around this very carefully, but
Right.
in regards to that, you're able to Forge enables a huge variety of good quality content in a short period of time once it's
Hmm.
released. That's the end goal. The question is, when is the right time for that? And because you're going to probably going to get Forge maps made, right? And
Hmm.
then 343 is going to kind of try to put those slowly into the rotation of it,
Hmm.
in regards to that. So I'm looking forward to Forge. I'm looking more forward to Forge than any other part of Halo Infinite right now. But they they have to do it right, and the question is, what is right, in regards to that for the people that really want to play the game, in regards to that. So that's why I say they're in a no-win situation. Those people that have like YouTube channels, all they do is complain about Halo, and it's not Halo 2 or 3 anymore. Like, I mean, eventually, I think they're losing voices. So, like, they're like, okay, you've been complaining about this for what, 8 years, 10 years now. Like, yeah, you got a certain segment of people that feel that way, but not everyone feels that way, and that's just kind of the harsh reality. So,
Yeah. And then my last point on this was the DLC in 2024, which I don't see that to being DLC. I think that that's from what we've all heard from different outlets as well, is that this is going to be another um, full version game.
mhm.
Be actually a continuance of Halo Infinite, because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that there has been, but I have and I mean, I can think of like Valhalla, but and you look at the big DLC that they had, but there was all these other DLCs in between before they did the Ragnarok DLC, which took a couple of years for them to come out. But not having any DLC now, or a snippet of anything that resembles some DLC, and to say that it's going to come out in 2024, that makes this, from this rumor, this part I just don't believe. I feel that they're just going to start over, do whatever that they're going to try to do. They already got the assets of what they've done with this, then really go deep and then bring us a different new game altogether. It's not going to be DLC. It's just be a continuance. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's
I think the
do you
campaign
are
and the
with me?
multiplayer are decoupled from one another.
Well, yeah, they're going
Uh,
back to what they were originally going to do. Remember what people was like, no, I want my multiplayer and my single player at the same time. But they're gonna have their cake and eat it too, because the multiplayer at this point in time, by 2024, it should be well enhanced
Well,
and better than it's ever
I
been
don't
at
think
that
they're
point.
starting over on multiplayer. I think they're just going to continue on.
No,
Yeah,
no, no, no,
yeah,
no,
right,
no, no, no.
right,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
Right.
It's kind of like how
Yeah.
they're doing with a lot of Call of Duty's type stuff. Some of it's continuous now,
Right.
in regards to not all of it, of course, but some of it's
Hmm.
that continuous thing. And I think they're going to have a continuous approach to the multiplayer in regards to that. Let's say you upload you install Halo Infinite 2, just call it that for now, right? And
Hmm.
you open Halo Infinite 2, you pull up the multiplayer lobby, and it's the same multiplayer lobby for Halo Infinite. It pulls you into the same group, in regards to that. And it doesn't surprise me if the timing is true, but there might be two things conflating. They might have some DLC planned, and they might have a standalone campaign planned down the road, and we're only hearing about one of them.
Right.
Or you might have a situation where the campaign is, maybe they're taking like an ODST approach to it, where like ODST was supposed to be just DLC for Halo 3, right?
Hmm.
And then they went back to the lab and made the game much, much bigger in scope. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so then it became its own standalone thing. And this might be the same case with whatever they're planning to do with this. It may be something we're going to do some iterative DLCs, and they're like, you know what, let's hold back. Let's combine these two DLCs together, and then let's do much, much bigger scope content, in regards to that. And so that's the type of boost I think it will give, relevance to the game again, right? Like a bunch of people have signed off on the multiplayer, but the multiplayer is good. It's polished by then, right? They have the campaign, and it's like, you know what? Yeah, Game Pass, whatever. I'll just install it and give it a shot, and then if they kind of those same notes. They love it again, and they hop on multiplayer, and then a bunch of other people are also in the game. So the lobbies are fuller. So um, we'll see what's going on. And as I said, there's a lot of track record issues recently with Infinite that I just have to wait and see. Right, I can't just give them the
Yeah,
benefit of the doubt where they're
it,
at
it
right now.
seems like they. It seems like they just now are implementing the plan that should have already been in place like 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
and that's and yeah, it's gonna hit. The one thing that I'll still stand by is that it's Halo. There will always be an audience for Halo.
Yeah.
But the more and more that they keep doing this, the more I'm starting to understand your point of view about like, okay, because I'm thinking, at my standpoint of it was like, oh well, if we got to wait for 2022 before all these things come the DLC, all of that, then yeah, no, it's going to take a while. But they're not. They'll be standing from a distance, but they'll come back. But if this is a process from 2022 to 2024, yeah, no, they're gonna take a big hit
Yeah.
for a minute, and if they're relying on Forge, which Forge this is supposed to be the biggest and best Forge that's ever been implemented,
Oh, it will be.
this thing better be
As
it
much as I was
it
crucial
better
about it,
rate.
just as much
Yeah.
as I was crucial about it, I will say it'll be bigger than anything we've ever seen.
Okay. So well,
Even if they release
come with it,
early, like that's what I'm saying. I'm rooting for Forge. Like I'm not hating on Forge. You know what I mean?
and
So
hopefully we get four-player co-op, a four-player
this
co-op
month or next month, sorry.
next month. Yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully we'll
yeah. It's
get four-player
what
co-op.
they're supposed to
Be-
do. Flights for that, so like a beta
Right.
version of it, and that
Oh
was
yeah, I need to go check it. So go check that out so
if
I
you're
can before
registered
I
for the
go start.
beta. I think for Halo Infinite, I think you're still in there.
Okay,
As far as
okay.
I
I'll just
understand.
go check
I'll
anyway.
I'll, I'll check back with you if that's changed or not.
Okay. All right.
But it's one of those things too. Like, is it solid enough it's in beta form, or do I wait until they'll wait till the end of the month when they remove it from beta form, right, and play with my
Mhm.
crew then, right? Like, what do I do in regards to that? So this kind of half in, half out, like they want to push it out because there's so much excitement around Halo. Like you can't deny that there's a
Mhm.
lot of excitement on Halo. That's the reason why be honest with you, they're in this position because there is excitement,
Right.
right?
Right.
But the same token, you Halo means so many things to so many different types of players, and so you're never gonna be able to please all of them. But you got to at least do your damn best too, right? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And have a plan in regards to that. So we'll see. And then my concern is like let's say they do the plan where they're released till 2024, right? Then they're going to have
Mhm.
another huge influx right after that content releases. They're going to lose a crap ton of their employees again because it's very transient. It's when projects are finished, when people move on to stuff like that, right? So they have to have a way to incentivize them to keep them around. Uh, Encourage them to be part of something continuous like that, not just get something out the door. So,
Yeah. I totally agree. All right, well, let's move on to our last topic, and that is about Final Fantasy VII, but with a little twist with this because
okay,
Fantasy VII remake, all the hoopla, I anticipated this game to still be coming to Xbox. I still do. I just feel that it'll be a lot longer because now we know that it's a trilogy, and I feel that Sony's got that is holding on to it. Paid the bag, for the trilogy. So,
okay,
um, now, of course, now if Square Enix gets acquired by Sony, or if Sony works some kind of deal, because there was something I seen yesterday where uh, there's rumors going out that Sony is trying to just uh, take all the Final Fantasies. They're not trying to acquire Square, but they're trying to lock down Final Fantasies as a PlayStation PC exclusive from
oh,
here on out. So that could definitely change everything. But um the question I want to ask you is, when is the right time to just go ahead and hang it up? Like, I mean, and just go ahead and go get another console,
okay.
or get you a built PC. How long do you feel that gamers should wait? Or N- I should say, well, wait, and on top of that, not to be frustrated, like these things happen, but how long would you wait? I guess I should ask you first, and then you could just give your perspective of
Three
how
must-have
you feel games
titles
flourish.
only on that platform.
Three.
Three,
Okay. All
right,
right.
right. So
Okay.
you have enough to justify investing in what I call, you call it the side piece, right? So
Right.
the not my main, but something I'm going to be playing down the road.
Hmm.
And it's not from a position. Oh, I hate those games because I can't get them. It's because can't get them right now. So what do I have to do? So for me, it has to be three in the pipeline that I must have that can only be obtained through that channel. I will pick up the hardware and I won't even think twice about it.
Hmm.
In regards to that, and usually it starts when the third one's announced. I'm like, I gotta get that, and then, so what I end up doing is I end up saving, for that piece of hardware and going from there. um, I think just getting frustrated with something or showing something hate because you just can't play it. I don't think that benefits you as a gamer. In regards to, matter of fact, it hurts my soul to see it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it just it's sucky about that, right? So, and what's cool now is and this goes for people that are primary PlayStation players going to Xbox, and the same thing also applies people that are primary Xbox players going to PlayStation. They can invest in, say if you don't want to get the console hardware, you can get the PC hardware, right? And that's kind of where I'm at right now with Sony titles. I love their games, but I just don't see any reason why to invest in their hardware because I'm not as invested in their ecosystem and all the other side stuff. I mostly play for some of their exclusive titles, and you know what? I'm gonna play their exclusive titles much sooner if I just buy it on PC anyways, right? So versus waiting for everything to be finally out on their console, I can go ahead and start purchasing games now. So that's the way I kind of look at it. So I mean, everyone's going to make their own decision, but I think there's a certain point you gotta just sack up and buy something, right? You know,
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like I just it's just kind of like when I made my video talking about it, just making a point like, look, man, I mean Xbox can't win them all. And
no.
Sony is their strategy has worked for them, but now there's kind of this monkey wrench thrown in with Microsoft just acquiring things instead of just like, you know what, look, we're not going to play this game. It doesn't work the same way for us to try to do the time exclusivity deals and all that. Let's just go ahead and acquire. And then that made Sony like, oh damn, well then let's try to do some requirements too, and then still kind of keep our strategy. It's gotten to a point to the more and more that I see from gamers out there in the wild when on social media, and I'm not talking about the stands, I'm just talking about just regular gamers. They kind of don't like those timed exclusivity deals. They're like, look, if it's exclusive, if it's first party, or if it's whatever type of thing, and if it's going to stay on that platform, then fine, let it stay there. Don't let it go anywhere else. Lock it down. But to have it to where, if the game that's going to eventually come over to another console, or to anywhere else, then people I think is kind of frustrated with that because even Nintendo's going to come out and I'm pretty sure sometime now. I don't know, think of this year, but maybe next year, or somewhere like that. They'll finally announce a new console for them or another hybrid, whatever that they'll do. Most likely, they'll probably do another hybrid. But Nintendo is so wild, we have no idea. But um, then you're going to have a situation to where the Nintendo fans are really going to be frustrated because if Sony tries to play these games with these certain type of titles, then you're going to lose a lot of extra money going into what Nintendo is going to have because the console is going to be comparable to handle those IPs. So I don't know, man. I think that time and era it works for Sony, but I think that gamers are getting tired of it. I don't know. Do you agree with me with that, or do you think that it's people still feel that these time
So it's not
exclusive deals work?
yeah, it's not looking at it positively. It could
Yeah,
be their consumer base is buying begrudgingly
yeah,
in regards to that.
yeah,
I guess maybe there's a certain segment of that sort of thing. So I can see where consumers are coming from on that.
yeah.
at the end of the day, where I get a little, I guess, frustrated or question marks and stuff like that is, don't ever let it, as a gamer, don't ever let it get to a point where I'm going to hate something because I can't play it because I don't have that
Right.
hardware.
Right.
Just at a certain point, if you really are interested, just don't hate on it. Just buy the hardware and figure out what makes the most sense for you, right? Like that's the way I kind of look at it.
Yeah.
In regards to that, and the publishing platforms like Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, they have to do their best to make sure as much products they can get on their machines. I mean, that should be your end goal
Right.
as a company, in regards to that. So yeah, I don't let it ever get to the point where I hate stuff. And the thing is, like, I don't like all of Xbox's first party titles. I don't like all of Sony's first party titles, and I don't like all of Nintendo's first party titles, right? But there's stuff I like
Hmm.
from all of them. And
Right.
to be honest with you, it just happens to more of that stuff lands on the Xbox side of things, for me. But you know, like, I'll never go from like a place where like I would hate a Sony title because I just can't play it because I don't have the hardware. In regards to that. I think
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what's concerning for me. Like, just buy something, and invest where you want it to. Like, and here's the thing: is like, as much as people like try to use the PC narrative to dismiss the console hardware, PC components come at a cost, right? It's not like it's a cheap answer, especially in today's economy, right? Like, the
Right.
console is
Right.
still
Right.
the cheapest point of entry, for most gamers, right? Like, I'm
Yes.
probably going to buy the new highest end 40 series card when I do that, and then I don't have to do that, but when I do that, it's going to be more expensive than probably both an Xbox and a PlayStation put together. I mean, that's just the harsh reality, right? So it's not the most economical way to do it, in regards to that, but it comes at a cost what I want to do, in regards to that. And I wouldn't fault anyone for buying the console hardware. It's a powerful piece of kit for a reasonable price. So
Yeah. No. And you're right. Like, and for me, like my way of kind of bucking that trend, is I'm just going to buy it on PC. I'm still going to support the developer.
mhm.
Because I want that game, but because you get into a position, and I get it. Like I said, if it's first party, or if there's some kind of deal where it's locked down to where it's just exclusive, then no, you know what I'm saying. I agree 100%. I'm not going to uh be mad at Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo for locking that franchise down. But to do it for where it's time, just to for purposes of where even and some people are going to jump back and say something crazy. I know they are when I say this, but for just console sales, when we all know at the end of the day that now Sony is even saying themselves that consoles, the console sale aspect of it is kind of a dying fad. We have to do something different. So, like,
I don't know. I think that's such bad wording on their part. It's not a dying fad. It's not dying. They keep doing better each iteration, right? But it's not growing at
yeah,
the same point as other stuff.
well,
Is
they're not
yeah,
generating the money that they have seen from what, like what they're seeing from what Xbox is doing, for how Xbox was
yeah, their
generating as much
competition.
money, being in third place. And Nintendo is now Nintendo is truly the console leader. Like, I mean, if not, they already have surpassed PlayStation 4 sales. They're close to it. And now Sony is looking at themselves at third this situation. And listen, I mean, console sales are important, but at the bigger scale of the bigger picture, even Sony now understands that it's not the all end all of what it used to be, and that's just because not everybody's
Yeah.
going to acquire a console. So that's you know what I'm saying, but what I'm saying, that's kind of like where I was going with that. My last point before you jump back in is that I just feel that now is the time to just go ahead and, for me, is like, I'm just gonna, like DNF Duel. That game is not a it's not it, it's a the game is not a Sony first party.
Yeah.
Why lock it down? You know what I'm saying? Why, I understand that you paid the money to have it locked down, but to take away, and you know how I am about fighters and other games like that, like to not have these other gamers that don't have a PlayStation to try to force them to pay $500 for a console, um, or try to force them to buy it to buy a PC or build a PC just to keep that away, like for however long or forever. I don't know. That's why I say like that's why I'll just buy the games
Well,
on.
on
I'll
third
still support
party,
the games, but I'll buy on PC.
third party's a little weird, right?
That's my
Because
thing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
because
weird to me.
let's say you do that, right? Well,
Yeah,
what keeps that consumer out of spite going, hey, you know what? I'm just going to buy it on PC and I'm going to buy it on
right,
Steam or I'm going to
right.
invest in a PC. So now what you've done is you've locked a consumer out of your ecosystem
Mhm.
at that point, right? If a consumer does something like that out of spite. So that's always kind of a danger, I think, with third party. It depends on how the consumer takes it, though. In regards to, but I can see that, like, okay, you're taking all these third party games, like say a consumer doesn't know any better. They just bought an Xbox and then there's some of these other games come out down the road and they're coming only to PlayStation. And you find out a third party it is, they're just like, well, you know, do they, if they do get upset, they do get frustrated, like they then and they're in the know why it happened, you know, what prevents them from going from a different ecosystem to purchase that out of spite of you? And that's and
Mhm.
that's that's more of a danger than anything else, right? Like the PlayStation is not going to go away because they're releasing content on PC. That's not going to be a thing, right? Like these
Yeah.
console sales keep doing better than their predecessors, right? Or console sales as a whole do better than their predecessors. So and PCs continue to do better than predecessors, right? We both grew up in that time where people say, "Well, PC is gonna wipe the map of console. Console's gonna wipe the map of PC every iteration of hardware." Right? You hear these
Right.
conversations, right?
Right. Right.
You're going on 25 plus years of these same arguments. They're all wrong. They all been growing. They all been doing their own
Yeah.
thing, and then now there's a third tier, which would be streaming for everything. And I don't think any of these things are just going to replace one another. I think they're all going to continue to grow,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah. No,
and I
they'll
think they will
they'll
all
still.
bleed into one another. And what's important is you're keeping gamers engaged in their products, and that's super super important. Because as long as you keep people engaged, they eventually will buy stuff from you. In regards to this, so I don't know. Sony's you'll see a lot of evolution. I think this generation with Sony with their game plan, and I think you're going to see less iterative things from Xbox because I think they've kind of set themselves on the course of where they're going to go with this stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and Nintendo will always do something we don't expect, right? So we'll see what they they do in the next couple of years or so. In regards to that, who knows? I mean, Nintendo starts releasing stuff on PC. I'm in. You know what I mean? So, and I'm not hating on Nintendo. I just have never been a huge fan of their hardware. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So, if I can get Mario Party and some classic Mario Brothers games, not emulator, none of these other things like done properly on the hardware, then I'm in. I'm excited for that. So just depends on what gamers want to do, though. At the end of the day, though, they never release it on PC. Eventually, I guess I'll get a Switch or the next iteration after a Switch, right? Like if it gets to
Right.
that point. So I'm not gonna get upset at them. Just gonna be like, well, just not the
Mm.
experience I'm shooting for, but at least I'm playing those games I wanted to play. So
Right. Right. Yeah, nobody should be upset about anything. I mean, it's
yeah,
just like, look, I said, I got a different angle about it. No different than if a PlayStation fan would just like, and what we've heard many times, well, I'll just buy Xbox game on PC. Well, you're still supporting that game regardless.
oh
So
yeah,
it's just, yeah, so it's not that's not the end of the world, but to be angry and what I've seen when Xbox gamers pissed off at Square Enix or pissed off at Sony, no need for that. It's business at the end of the
yeah,
day. I mean, you don't have to like the practice, but you still have to, just find another way or just wait or just eventually lose interest if it comes down to where you refuse to buy a PlayStation or Xbox or whatever. You know, what I'm saying there's plenty of other games out
your
there
your hobby
to get you
shouldn't
excited.
present that much grief in your life. Does that make sense?
Right, right,
And if it is,
exactly.
you're doing it wrong. You need to reflect back.
You're doing it
What
way
you're
wrong.
reflect. You need
Yes.
to reflect back and what's causing that for you. In regards to that, and then maybe cut that out of your life, whatever that is, whatever
Yeah.
that is. So
No doubt.
yeah, I just want more healthy gamers. I want people to engage, and I want people to enjoy themselves, and that's really what it comes down to. It. So
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get out of here. I do want to read this before we get out of here because I bet you get a chuckle out of this because you
okay,
were keeping up with this. But Tataku came out with a headline saying vilifying Amber Heard shows we learn nothing from Gamergate.
huh? I don't know how you conflate those two.
I don't know. That's the headline. I'm looking at it right now and I'm kind of like, okay, so vilifying Amber Heard. Well, there was a reason why you vilify Amber Heard for what she's done. You know what I'm saying? I mean, are people trying to say that Robert Downey Jr. Oh, I said Robbie Downey Jr. Hot damn.
Oh, she's
Johnny Depp.
okay.
Johnny Depp was completely innocent. I'm sure he wasn't. But I
No.
mean, the person who was the meanest of the mean out of the two, it was definitely her. So I mean, she wasn't a good person. So I mean, why not people just express that their feelings about how they're shocked or they're upset with her. So I mean, I don't know. I just don't get it.
I don't know how you
Tataku be on some
I don't know how you conflate that sort of stuff. Like I don't know.
no like
Like here's the society we're in. We're all innocent
yeah
until proven guilty, regardless of how we're born in this world, right? Like
right
that's something we're all entitled to, right?
right
you know but when something is at a foot, someone has to build a case in those situations, right? And that's where your stance is until that happens, right? And then when you go to court, it's the jury and it's the judge. Those are the people that decide if you're guilty of something or you're not, right? And that's the harsh reality. That is the process that we all kind of go through, and it's not a perfect system, but it's the fairest system we have, and we got to continue to refine it. Let's not throw that out. Let's refine it. Let's get better at it. In regards to, because we're all entitled to, we should all be entitled to that. And then when you make mistakes, there's also should be always a road of forgiveness, right? Like we don't talk about rehabilitation for people enough, right? And so I mean that's what all this sort of stuff is. This guilty by association, this guilty just taking it aside without hearing all the facts. And there's a lot of that sort of stuff that happens out there. It's just unfair, because
yeah
there's people that abuse the system for their benefit, where we have certain things to protect certain people, and those people should be held in very high contempt when they do that. And I would say just as much as people that do the wrong thing in regards to that. And I'm talking in generalization, but that's what we're dealing with here. So if you do crime, it's your fault, right? Like I don't know.
I'm
So
gonna read this. I'm gonna read
yeah,
this, and okay. Okay, so it says complex women can't be perfect. People,
no,
including other women, want physical beauty. The vaginal porcelain face of Jane Einray, not the wild-haired Bertha Mason. The man locks her in an attic, and somehow she's the crazy one. Or in video games, the pink princess Peaches, the curvy Laura Croft, but they also demand emotional perfection, quietness, level headedness, no conflicting facial expressions like Amber Heard had, sobering 1 second and and sober the next. People don't want to see anything that indicates that this woman, pretty as she is really just a human. She makes mistakes. Sometimes she hits back or she misspeaks. I, I,
I don't know. If you
I
have
I I I don't know. What is that? What? The woman took a shit on a bed. Like, bro, that's I don't care how pretty she looks. That shit is deranged. I mean, there's plenty of women and men out there, doesn't matter how they look, that are crazy. And this is,
you gotta treat people equally. So when people screw up,
yeah,
you hold everyone
you
in
you
equal
hold them
regard.
accountable.
Because what that does, it diminishes. Here's the problem: it diminishes women that there
Right,
are victim of violence, right?
right,
To
right.
a point, you know, like you got to protect those people, right? The people that are actual victims of this sort of stuff, right?
Hmm.
And so when people use these sort of victimhood things to get ahead in life, it creates divides within society, and it creates we can't come together, and that's not a healthy thing. In regards to that, you know, like you and I have had conversations behind the scenes, all sorts of different stuff outside of gaming. But
Yeah,
you know, my approach has always been it's important how you act and not how you react to a situation, which means you have to hear everything out, even if you don't like to hear what someone has to say, right? You got to hear it all out. You got to look at it from all perspectives to come to a conclusion. And it sounds like an article where they took her side ahead of time before they had all the evidence,
hmm,
and then they dug their heel in the sand. That's not how we treat people in society as a whole in regards to it. And I'm not saying no one's saying Johnny's perfect or anything like that, or you know
right,
that sort of thing. It's what you accuse people of if they're not guilty of it, and then that's harsh. That you know that's why we have this impartial system that's out there, and it does bleed into things you hear about in gaming, right? Like you hear about misconducts at studios. Guess what? They're innocent until proven guilty. It sucks to say that, right? But you got to build a case, right? You got to protect yourself if you're a victim in that situation. In the same token, if somebody was miscategorized as a villain in a situation, they're a victim too, right? Like that's the how this sort of stuff works. So, um, gaming has you know here's the thing: humans are going to do stupid shit to try to get ahead, and then that's just
right.
simply what it is. And people get into their own feelings, they get into their own self, and it bleeds into everything. And I hate the fact that it bleeds into gaming. I still know studios that I constantly hear shit shit about, right? But they're innocent until proven guilty. That's the harsh
Right.
reality, and that's why I don't talk about that stuff because I don't want to be wrong on that sort of stuff. I want to hear all the aspects of certain things, and if someone's guilty of mistreating someone,
Right.
throw the book. I don't have any empathy for that. But if someone actually is the playing the victim card to try to get ahead, I don't have any empathy for that person either. Like you know, you know, that's just how that stuff works. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
quit trying to conflate all that sort of stuff. You know,
Well, I mean, that's
yeah,
exactly what, yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? It just the more that I read this, the more I'm just kind of like, okay, so you basically want people to, oh, we can understand that she has problems and she needs help, but you also got to understand too that she did bad things. And
yeah,
and at the end, there's always going to be a person that's going to be the less abused and the more and the bigger abuser. So and most of the times, the person that was less abusive, that was getting abused the most, is going to be the victim. That's just the reality of things. Like, I mean, that's exactly what's going on. Like I'm saying, that Johnny Depp is not excluded from being, is not excluded from not saying that he didn't make mistakes or he didn't do something stupid himself. Like, I think this relationship was way too far
well,
gone in the first place. But
she won in the countersuit, so obviously the jury found him to you know be guilty of
right,
something, right? I mean
to be
that's
guilty of some things too,
yeah.
right? So
So, but you know this is a system in place, right? Like that's the harsh reality. Quit trying to conflate every. We need to start looking at people as individuals too. Like this whole like lumping each other in a group and you're in this group and versus that group is dismissive of people. It's not appropriate to do. It's just you know it's superficial and it's and almost to be honest with you it's bigoted. Like it's called what it is. Like it's just bigoted. And so you know I would hope people would just treat people better and than that, and people that are guilty of treating people like shit, I hope I don't have any empathy for you. Like I hope you
yeah,
get what you deserve, if you know what I mean, right? And then people that miscategorize people. I hope you get what you deserve in regards to this. So we have to
This
function
is
in a
wild.
society, and we have to hold people accountable. And if someone comes with a fair system that makes sense, I'll hear them out. But until then, I
Yeah, like
have no
I
empathy
just
on that
don't.
sort of
Yeah,
thing. Like I'm done. So
yeah. Just one more part of this I just got to read because this is just blowing my mind. The egregious, you know what I'm saying, man with the power and the money is death has tried smacking the memory out of her. I want to say the world will come to her aid. We're supposedly post Gamergate, post Me Too. I want to believe that we are all now equipped with the basic understanding that abuse is manifested because sometimes subtle, always you know what I'm saying, insidious and confusing. But you know what I'm saying, but her continues to be abused in the court of public opinion. And as a result, other real imperfect victims know for certain that we aren't supported. I don't know, like bro, like you're right. Like it just seems like it's never good enough. Like I mean, the woman was wrong. The woman was wrong. And if, like you said, like, because like I said, I've been paying attention to it. I just know other things that I've
you
seen, or
you only
my
hear
wife and her
stuff
friends
through
have
the
been all up on
grapevines,
it.
like just
So
like because it's a wild story,
right,
right?
like,
Like
and even
that's
my wife was like, she was a crazy chick, like you know.
yeah.
So right, so I don't know, man. It is what it
You
is,
got
but
to
it's
be
very
able to
interesting.
call balls and strikes on your side too.
Right.
That's the harsh reality, right? Like if you come from a certain line of thought and someone misrepresents that line of thought for you because they're being manipulative in that situation, you got to call them out because like they're not doing you any favor. Well, like how you feel and how you come and approach things. It's just how that stuff is. So with people of abuse, I'm sorry that that stuff happens. Definitely just protect yourself. Do what you can to take care of yourself. And you know, most people will, in the court of public opinion, I don't think anyone tolerates that shit, right? Does that make sense? Like people don't tolerate
Hmm.
abuse. People don't side with abusers. They don't like that shit. You know what I mean? And just because you're born a certain way doesn't mean you're gonna be get the benefit of all that sort of stuff, right? So I mean, just it is what it is, right? Like put bad girls and bad guys away. That's as far as I'm concerned. And they just have no place in entertainment either, as well, right? Like we tend to, developers, we hold them on a pedestal. We also put movie actors on pedestals. They're human. They can have flaws and they can make mistakes. So that's my take on it. Just I don't know why they're complaining that with Gamergate. That's just silly.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with anything. But
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah. It's
All right. Well, that was
ridiculous.
one way to conclude Devin the Gamer. That was a first. So, you
Yeah,
know what I'm saying, talking about entertainment. But hey,
yeah.
it is what it
They
is.
spill into one another, right?
I guess so.
According to
Yes, they do.
Kotaku, it does, right? So,
Right. Boy. Anyway. All right, Don, where can they find you at, bro?
the best thing to do is follow me on Twitter, the Don underscore KTR. Everything I'm involved with, my Instagram, two YouTube channels, actually about to be a third YouTube channel soon. Twitch and Facebook are all listed there, so you guys can be involved with whatever platform, social media platform you prefer. In regards to that, and after this, I'm gonna start continue editing my next YouTube video. So hopefully, I'll have something out by next Tuesday. In regards to that, but the only way you're gonna know is follow and subscribe and all that the good stuff. So
No doubt. And as for me, man, check me out on Twitter at KMega4. On the channel, on my YouTube channel, KMega405. On Twitch, with the same name, KMega405. And man, yeah, I will try to do fight night tonight. It'll be the normal time that I usually try to do it around like 10:30. You know what I'm saying, when it cools down. Because if I want to play some PC games or anything like that, I am not trying to be in this 100 and some degree weather in this room and bake like a lobster. It just ain't happening. So so we'll do it tonight, most likely. And everybody have a good one, man. It was really fun. We'll catch you later, man.
all right, later.
Peace.